Okay. We're going to continue where we left off yesterday. We're in the Gemara Brachas Yud Tes Amud Beis. We're just going to quickly review the last part that we did, and then we'll move ahead, try to get this whole sugya in today if possible. So yesterday we said, Amar Rabbi Yehuda Marav. Rabbi Yehuda is in the name of Rav. Amaitzi kilayim b'vigdol. If a person happens to be wearing a prohibited mixture of wool and linen together, Paish nafilu b'shuk, he has to remove it even in the street, even though he's going to be embarrassed. My time, what's the reason? The pasuk says in Mishlei, Ein chachma ve'ein tfuna ve'ein eitzel l'neged Hashem. There's no value to wisdom or understanding or counsel when it weighs against the honor of Hashem. Meaning to say, Kol makom sheish chil Hashem, whenever there's a desecration of God's name, Ein chol kin kavod l'rav. We don't give respect even to a teacher who's the professor of wisdom and understanding. Okay? So therefore, we don't give honor, and we have to follow what the Torah says. Okay.
Can I ask you a question, Rabbi?
Yeah.
Is it only a desecration of God's name because it's apparent to everyone around him that he's wearing what he's wearing?
No, well, not only to them. It's a desecration. The person knows that he's doing a sin. Remember, the idea of Chil Hashem starts with the individual. You know you're doing a sin. You know you're doing a sin, so why are you continuing to do the sin? You should stop the sin as soon as possible. You know, Yiddishkeit doesn't work out according to your convenience, right? You're doing a sin every minute you're wearing the kilayim. So now what are you saying? Well, God, let me do it when it's convenient for me. When I get home, I'll take it off. If you understand that every second you're doing an Aveira and you're aware of it, right? So if you're aware of it and there's a biblical transgression that's going on over here, then why in the world would you continue to do this? Rav Dessler has a very famous piece on this. If you know the classic example of Kiddush Hashem versus Chilul Hashem, when the Rambam gives the example of Kiddush Hashem, what's the prima facie example he gives? He gives the case with Yosef HaTzadik when he resisted the temptations of the wife of Potiphar. Now, how many people were in that place when the event happened? Just Yosef and the wife of Potiphar. More than that, she went and cried rape, and Yosef ended up in jail. Yet the Rambam uses that as the example of Kiddush Hashem. So if that's the example of, because he says, Rav Dessler says, we first work on a Kiddush Hashem in our own personal lives. Then we work to broaden the Kiddush Hashem. Why? Because when you work on it in your private life, then you know you are doing it l'shem shamayim. You're doing it for the sake of God. When we're doing something publicly, you never know if it's for the sake of God or for your own good reputation. And that's why he says, first you do Kiddush Hashem by yourself, then you do it in front of Jews, and then you even try to do it in front of non-Jews. So the opposite of Chil Hashem will be the same thing. You know you're wearing a garment that is not that has got shotness in it. So how in the matter can you continue to wear it knowing that you have shotness? So you're going to be embarrassed. So you're going to be embarrassed. So what does it mean to be embarrassed versus Hashem? Remember, Chil Hashem by definition means, from the word chilul means a vacuum. So a vacuum means there's literally a vacuum that Hashem has vacated your realm of existence. So if you don't feel that Hashem is in, if you just say, when it's convenient for me, I'll take it off, that means you don't believe that God is existing in this point in time. And that would be a Chil Hashem. Okay, good?
The only thing is wouldn't that apply to every sin? Every type of sin, that you would have to immediately stop it and not wait for anything, like for a better moment. Yeah.
Correct. You're right. Okay, so obviously, so let's take an example. All right, let's say an example, a very secular Jew. A very secular Jew who now all of a sudden realizes that Yiddishkeit is correct.
Right.
and that you have to live by Hashem. Obviously, that Jew is so far away from the corpus of normative Judaism. If he's going to have to stop every Avera he does, he's just going to give up on that. And therefore, as much as he should stop doing everything, but it's not reasonable to assume that he will, because there's so much about Yiddishkeit that he just is not into, that it's going to be way too much to be able to get him to keep all that. These psukim of Mishlei and everything, this is talking about observant Jews who are following the Torah. If you're a God-fearing Jew who follows the Torah, you understand that in the place of Chilul Hashem, you have to be embarrassed. That's first halacha in the Shulchan Aruch, in Orach Chaim, where the Ramah, when Shulchan Aruch says, Shivis Hashem l'negdi tamid, you have to always place Hashem in front of your eyes. That's your motto, as it were. You have to live by that. And the Ramah discusses how you should not be embarrassed from people who mock you with your Yiddishkeit. It's the same idea. You have a mitzvah to do, so the goy is going to laugh at you. Okay, so the goy is going to laugh at you. You're going to be embarrassed. He says it's not your worry to be embarrassed. You don't get, when it's talking about Chilul Hashem, you don't worry about it being embarrassed. Okay, we're not talking about doing things that can be perceived as a Chilul Hashem again. But clearly, we have to do it, any mitzvah. So the Gemara is giving you an extreme example. It doesn't get more extreme than that. You have to disrobe in public. It's going to be quite embarrassing, but that's what the halacha dictates. Okay, good?
Good.
I'm glad you asked the question. Tony, you're on the ball. Always asking good questions. Everybody asks good questions. Okay, that's what we got up to yesterday. So now the Gemara is going to go through a series of questions from Brisas that seem to contradict us. Remember, if you know Rav is an Amora, so if there's Brisas statements that are in conflict with what he's saying, then it's a problem with that statement, the way he expounded the pasuk in Mishlei. So we're going to start with the first example. And this is where it relates to our Gemara. Somebody asked, what does this have to do with our Gemara? We're talking about burying the dead, Kriyashman, things like that. What's the topic have to deal with people, wearing shatnez or not? So we'll see how this relates. Meisvei, we ask a question from the following brisa. It says, Kavras ameis v'chazru, when you're burying the dead and now you're returning back from the cemetery. So now there's some other issues that we have not talked about. We've talked about how it relates to Kriya Shema, but how does it relate to other aspects? So now they're going back from the cemetery. V'lifneihem beis derachim. Now there's two ways to go back. Achas, one way is Tahora. One way is a place where there are no, remember, one is Tahor, okay, and the other is Tameh, okay, and whatever Tumah is there that we'll see in a minute. So now, Ba b'Tahora, if the mourner takes the Tahor road, Ba inimo b'Tahora, we follow him in the Tahor road. Ba b'Tmeya, and now if the mourner takes the Tameh road, Ba'in ima b'Tmeya, we also follow him on the Tameh road. Now we're generally not supposed to go on a Tameh road. Now why do we go? Mishum kvoda, out of respect for him. Okay, so now what's going to happen is they're going to become Tameh from that. Now, of course, it was a funeral, and there were certain people who were Tameh, but not necessarily everybody had to be Tameh. Remember, the times of the Gemara, people were much more careful not to be Tameh. Only people who had to be Tameh were Tameh. But if there's lots of people, you could stand socially distant. Remember, the issue of social distancing started in the Torah. It did not start from Ontario or the secular governments, because we know the halacha is you have to be Daled Amis away from a grave. The Daled Amis is between 6 and 8 feet. So we had to always be socially distant from Tumah. So here's the point. The point of the Bryce is saying that out of respect for the mourner, the people who accompany themselves are allowed to become Tumah, even though they did not become Tumah during the funeral, despite the fact there's a prohibition. The question is, what's exactly the prohibition? There's nothing wrong with the Yisrael to be Tumah. if there's no avera for Yisrael to become tamei, he just can't eat any kachim or truma or things like that in a state of tumah. But obviously, the Bryce is implying that even a Kohen, or obviously there's no Chiddush, that even a Kohen who's following the mourner, he too should follow the mourner and take the Tamei road. Now there's a biblical prohibition of a Kohen not allowing himself to contract corpse tumah. So, and if you see the commentaries, all kinds of maforshim, if a Yisrael has the problem or not, but clearly a Kohen for sure has the problem. So now what do we say? The Kohen can't become tamei. Why? In honor of the mourner who's leaving, and it's comforting that there are people following him home from the cemetery. So that's the connection to our Gemara. We're talking about the halachas of right after a funeral in regards to Kriya Shema, so we're going to see in other aspects. So now that's the Bryce. So now comes the question. So now why? Lema, let's say the same rule. Ein chachma ve'ein tvuna l'neged Hashem. Let's apply the pasuk. There's no value to wisdom and understanding when weighed against the honor of Hashem. So we should weigh the fact that a Kohen should not become tamei, should override any considerations of showing respect for the mourner. So the Gemara is going to answer. Tirgama Rav Abba. Rav Abba is going to explain that brisa. And this gets into a lot of Hilchos Tova V'Tara. So Shelley, you'll be okay in this area because we went through this painfully in the Rambam a long time ago. But you'll be fresh on this. So he says we're thinking about the Beis HaPras, a place that's called a Beis HaPras. D'Rabbanan that the Tumah is rabbinic. If you recall, if there is a place where there was a grave and the owner plowed the entire field up, and therefore, whatever corpse may have been in the grave, and it's a large area that we discussed. I want to get into all the details of Tum and Tahara now, but it's shown that the plow plowed up the entire field. It means the bones were all over the place, and therefore, maybe there's a few fragments that are scattered all over there, but then there's a certain shear it has to be, etc., etc. And there's the point we can see now. According to biblical law, the possibility of there being a substantial enough fragment that's enough to give tumah, it's not likely because the plowshare digs very deep in the ground to reach the corpse and destroys the corpse. But the rabbis were afraid that it could be there's a possibility within a certain range that maybe there's still a little bit of the corpse over there. So therefore, the rabbis said, you become tamei. I don't want to get into all the technical details of that, but that's an area which is only rabbinically tamei. So it's only rabbinically tamei, but biblical, that part is not tamei. So when the Brisa says you can accompany in a tamei place, it doesn't mean a biblically tamei place, but a rabbinically tamei place. And how do we know it's only rabbinic? To Amar Rabbi Yehuda Shmuel, Rabbi Yehuda Shmuel says, a person can go through a Beis HaPras, that's area that's been plowed. He can blow on the ground as he walks through it, because then he could maybe, by blowing it, he can possibly uncover a fragment and he will remain tor. Now, that proves that a Beis HaPras is only rabbinic, because if a Beis HaPras was biblical, the rabbis would never allow you to do that because most likely you come in contact with some type of a bone when you're blowing and you could touch it. And therefore, it's clear that it's only a much less issue over here. Okay, there's a whole other discussion, but I don't want to go there. Anyway, the bottom line is we're talking about a rabbinic issue, and that becomes a new rule. When the rabbis make decrees, remember, they make decrees to ensure the upkeep of the biblical laws. Okay, so they felt that a Beis HaPras, even though biblically is not tamei, but if we would allow people to walk through that, then this is a step closer to actual tumah. But the rabbis did not institute any rabbinic decrees where it could cause hardships to other people. Now, as opposed to a biblical law. When Hashem tells you the law, then the law has to be kept, period. When the rabbis legislate a stringency, they would not legislate the stringency in a place and there's many criteria where they would not apply it. For example, a case of hefsid meruba, a great financial loss, let's say. We know that the rabbis say that you're not allowed to transgress a rabbinic prohibition, a biblical prohibition, even if you're going to lose all your money. For example, there's a fire in your house, you're in the middle of nowhere, no life is in danger, very important, there's no life in danger, but your whole house will be burnt up and you'll lose $5 million and it's not insured. Theoretical case, and it's Shabbos. Can you put out the fire? The halacha is no, because that would require transgressing a biblical prohibition of putting out a fire. And therefore, you have to be willing to lose all your money. Because in a biblical prohibition, you're not allowed to transgress. But what would be a rabbinic prohibition, where the rabbis just want to ensure the integrity of the biblical law? But really, biblically, it's okay. So, for example, a great financial loss, the rabbis would not make such a decree in that situation. Similarly, over here, when we're talking about a rabbinic decree of walking through a place that has one corpse and it's been plowed for a very wide area where they levied rabbinic tumah, they will not apply their rabbinic law in a case of kavod to somebody else. That's the point. And that's what, so therefore it's not a question. And for Amar Rabbi Yehuda bar Ashi, Mishmei Rav, and Rabbi Yehuda bar Ashi also said in Rav, Beis hapras shenidash tor. And therefore a beis hapras that was trampled upon by many people who use it as a thoroughfare after the fact is tor, because we assume that any bone fragments that were brought to the surface by the plow were crushed under the feet of the passerbyers. So since the beis hapras is used as a thoroughfare, we can now assume that the bones have been trampled upon and they've been less than the size of a barley corn, and therefore that will create an extra leniency, as it were. So therefore, that's the case we're talking about. So really, at the end of the day, a beis hapras, that many people travel through, and obviously in this case over here, that it's for a funeral, obviously people have been traveling through this. So it's d'rabbanan anyway, the tumah to go through, and B, the fact that it's been trampled on, so it's b'chalal not a problem. Therefore, it's no question from this case. Okay, so Gemara is going to try to pick another example. Toshma, fascinating case over here, where we're going to, again, it appears to see that we're allowing a transgression of a biblical prohibition for someone's honor, so to speak. The Omer Rabbi Elazar ben Tzadok said, he recalls things that he did earlier in life. Remember, Rabbi Elazar ben Tzadok is a kohen, and he said, "Medalgin hayu al gabi aronas al mesim likras malchi Yisrael." We would come and jump over coffins of the dead in order to greet a king of Israel. Okay, so now we have on the one hand Rabbi Elazar ben Tzadok, who was a king, was a kohen, and in order to greet a king of Israel and give him the due respect, he would, where necessary, climb over coffins that was blocking the road. And now he's going against the sin of a prohibition of a kohen allow himself to become corpse tumah. As we know, a kohen is not allowed to become corpse tumah, to give honor to a king. And not only that, Veloli Kras Malchi Yisrael Bavad, they didn't only say this regarding to greet a Jewish king, but Ella Afili Kras Malchi Yaakov. Even when it's a Goyish king coming by, you can jump over the corpses for that. Well, Jewish king, I can at least understand why you're going to do that, to give honor to a Jewish king. But what's the idea of a non-Jewish king? The answer is a fascinating concept. Shem Yiska, because if you merit and you will be able to be and sing the Messianic era, Yavchin ben Malchi Yisrael and Malchi Yaakov. You'll be able to discern the difference between the great honor that will be bestowed upon a king of Israel and lesser honors that are given to idolatrous kings. So that's a big mouthful we just said over here, and we're going to get to the question obviously in 1 second. But the point being said is that the Kohen here did exactly this. He went and jumped over the coffins. Would appear he's going to become Tameh, and he's becoming Tameh in order to greet a Jewish king to accord him honor. So why don't we say the rule that you're not allowed to violate a Torah law just to give somebody else honor or respect. This whole concept is a fascinating concept where it is taka a mitzvah, so to speak, to see a very powerful Goyish king. And for this reason, because when Mashiach comes, we're gonna see, wow, to compare the great honor to the Melech of Mashiach, you can only compare that by seeing what honor is given to Goyim. And if you see what honor a powerful Goyish king gets, and now you see the great honor that the Melech HaMashiach gets, it's going to be a great honor for the Melech HaMashiach in contrast to what's going on over there. Parenthetically, you see that this raises our Mashiach consciousness, because many can say, I'm never going to see Mashiach. I'm never going to get to see Mashiach. So no. You have to You have to, wait for the Mashiach to come at any time. He could come tomorrow. So if you have a chance to see a Goyish king now, and then compare that when you're going to see the Melech HaMashiach, it's an aspect to do that. Anyway, but now the Gemara comes back to the question. So Amai, why was he allowed to do this, considering a Kohen becoming tummy is a biblical prohibition, so that should outweigh going to honor the king? Lema, let's say the same idea. There's no value to the wisdom, understanding, or counsel and weight against Hashem. More answers, again, getting into Hilchos Tumah that I'm not going to get too involved in. Basically, More is going to say the same answer, that really there's no Tumah, a little more really, that there's no Tumah in these situations per se. Why? Kida Rava, as Rava says, to Amar Rava says, Devar Torah, according to biblical law again, okay, and this was Halacha L'Moshe Sinai, Ohel, any type of a roof hanging over a corpse that has corpse tumah, or for that matter, a coffin. And we know a corpse, where the corpse lies, on top of it, tumah. This tumah goes over the corpse up to the shamayim. Therefore, you can't walk over, even though you're not touching a corpse. There's tumas ohel, where you are creating yourself as a tent over the corpse. You can't do that. However, what if it already has an enclosure? So if the corpse is enclosed in an enclosure, a barrier, whatever, sheish bo halal tefach, if there is the space from the corpse that's lying, let's say, on the bottom of the coffin, a tefach, 4 inches of space from the top of the body of the corpse till the seal of the enclosure, let's say the coffin per se, it's chotzeis b'pnei tumah. It blocks the tumah, and the tumah cannot pass over that. Okay? There's a whole discussion over there. I don't want to get into all to the details. U'she'ein bo chlal tefach, if it doesn't have the space of a cubic tefach on top, ein chotz b'pnei tumah. It does not block the tumah. Okay, now the question is, in the days of the Talmud, what was the status of coffins? Remember, people are buried in aronos, in a cemetery. So what was the status of the aronos in those days? Varov aronos, yesh ben chlal tefach. And the fact is, most coffins have at least one tefach of empty space between the corpse and the top of the coffin. So the coffin serves as a barrier and blocks the tumah. So on a biblical level, there's no tumah in a graveyard because they're all buried in these coffins. However, the rabbis came along again, but they made a rabbinic decree that doesn't matter, even a corpse in a coffin, that the tumah is blocked, still it's going to give off rabbinic tumah, because of the various coffins that don't have a tefach of space in between. So therefore, it comes out nowadays, going into a cemetery is only a rabbinic prohibition because most coffins have a tefach of space between the corpse and the coffin. And now it's just buried in the ground. The ground itself doesn't give off any tumah. It's just the corpse. And the corpses that are already blocked off, they don't give any biblical tumah, but the rabbis instituted rabbinic tumah. Umishum kvod balachim lo gazr b'hem rabbanon. And because of the honor of kings, they did not make the decree again. So again, where the rabbis go is how far the decree goes is in terms of to mainly preserve the integrity of the biblical law. But they will not apply the rabbinic law where there's more overriding factors, such as greeting a Jewish king or even a non-Jewish king, where that is a very important thing for a Jew to see in terms of his enhanced Yiddishkeit, and therefore that is let go. So therefore we've had two examples where the rabbis made a decree, and for rabbinic law, we push it aside. Okay, one is going to try one more time. Tashma, again, we're going to challenge Rav's teaching by saying the following statement, a general statement that seems again to go against the statement. Gadol kavod habrios, the value of human dignity is so great, shedocha es lo saseh shebetorah. Straight out, it pushes off a negative commandment of the Torah. So right now, the Gemara is just looking at the statement at face value. And at face value, it's more assuming it's referring to a biblical prohibition. A lo saseh shebetorah. The words say a negative transgression of the Torah. So again, and we're saying kavod habrios. So why do we say that? Say the same thing. There's no counsel, wisdom against Hashem. How can you say that kavod habrios overrides a lo saseh, a negative transgression of the Torah? So therefore, he answers. Now he's going to give an answer. The Gemara is going to misunderstand that answer for a moment until he clarifies it. Tirgama Rav Bar Shava, Kamei Rav Kahana. Rav Bar Shava, while Sigma Bar Rav Kahana, interpreted that brisa as not referring to biblical prohibitions. When it says a lo saseh shebetorah, it does not mean a biblical lo saseh, but it means belav of the negative of the lo sasur. There is a specific biblical negative commandment that says you should not deviate from what the rabbis tell you to do. So he's only referring to that biblical commandment. That biblical commandment that tells us that we have to listen to what the rabbis say. Any other biblical commandment, of course, you cannot violate it. But only this lo saseh, where the Torah says, God says you have to listen to what the rabbi says. So when he said that answer, at first they thought he was referring to, you're not allowed to listen to the way the rabbis interpret the biblical law. So therefore they didn't like that at all. So they laughed at him. And they said, Lav de lo sas deraisahu. This biblical prohibition is a biblical prohibition. You have to listen to what the rabbis say. You can't say the prohibition says, the rabbi says, no, they don't have to listen. That itself is a biblical law. So how can you flout what the rabbis say? So what he's saying doesn't mean that. Omer Rav Kahana said, Gavra, Rabbi, a big person like Rav Bar Shva says something, lo sachichol, don't laugh at him. You know he must have meant something else, but it means like this. Doesn't mean to say that we directly don't listen to what any rabbi says. So your rabbi don't have to listen to you. That's biblical prohibition. But kol mil de rabbana, but any rabbinic halacha that is established, such as tuma of a beis hapras or things like that, asbechinon alav de lo saser. The rabbis, when they make any law, why are they allowed to make any rabbinic laws? Because the Torah says they're allowed to make rabbinic laws. Okay, they base their authority on the negative commandment that you have to listen to them. In other words, biblically, you have to listen to what a rabbi says, and you don't say, well, the rabbi says that I don't have to listen to him. But then again, when the rabbis make a law, they can give the parameters of their law. And therefore, when the rabbis come along, umishum kvodo shara rabbanim, and when it comes to somebody's honor, the rabbis will let it go. In other words, what he meant to say is like this. When he said that a kavod habrios overrides a lo saseh the Torah, he didn't mean to say that, you don't have to listen to the rabbis. That's what more thought it meant. Well, I don't have to listen to what the rabbi said. The rabbi said, I don't have to listen to you. No, it means the rabbis, for this law of a rabbinic law, the way the rabbis can, biblically, the rabbis are allowed to make laws. The rabbis make any law they want, they feel enhances Yiddishkeit. And a Jew has to listen to that. You cannot say, well, you just said that, I'm not listening to that. You're making a second day of Pesach Yontif, I'm not listening to you. No, you can't do that. But when the rabbis make the law because of the biblical power they're given, but the rabbis can give the parameters as to how far they had their rabbinic law go. And that's what he means to say. When the rabbis, that Kavod Abrius can push off a rabbinic mitzvah, it means the rabbis themselves will not apply the stringency in a place where there's kavod. And that's what the footnote says here. The rabbis waive the difference that the Torah accords them by relaxing their legislation, allowing it to be superseded by considerations of human dignity. And here's a couple examples. Rashi gives two examples where the rabbis relaxed it. Remember, the rabbis instituted muktzah. So they relaxed the prohibition of muktzah and allowed one to use stones in order to clean oneself after defecating on Shabbos. You know, in those days, they didn't have toilet paper. So rocks, regular rocks, are muktzah. So not biblically, but rabbinically. The whole idea of muktzah is rabbinic. So therefore, the rabbi said, you know what, if you happen to be in the bathroom and you need something to wipe yourself and there's a stone lying around, you could use it. Oh, it's muktzah, it's muktzah. Well, that's Kavod Abrius. The rabbis would not apply muktzah in situations like that. Or other examples. Another one is if one of your four tzitzis of a garment tears off while you're walking in a public domain, so there's only 3 tzitzis, so you know, you've got to remove the garment because now it's a 4-cornered garment, only has 3 tzitzis. So therefore, the garment really isn't something that you're supposed to be wearing. So then there'd be a problem of carrying. So you'd have to take off the thing. But if you're in a Carmelist where there's only a rabbinic prohibition, you can keep wearing it in that case. But the point is, the rabbis were allowed to create that dispensation. That's what we've been saying all along. So therefore, we got another answer. We're still not finished with the sugya. We got another 1 or 2 questions to go before we finish this sugya. Okay, take care. Sei gesund, everybody. Have another wonderful day in the cold and rain. Baruch Hashem, I went with my wife for a walk anyway yesterday. You just cannot let this weather get you down. Not everybody has a treadmill like Shelly has in his house, so he can just exercise in his house. So us who don't have one, so just go out for a walk anyway and stay healthy. All right, have a good day.
Thank you, Stan.
Okay, sei gesund.
Oh, Steve's there too. See you, Steve. See you, Alexander.